Imagine being in the presence of a dinosaur. Paleontologists tell us of carnivores as tall as a two-storied house, of herbivores that weigh the equivalent of 20 elephants. But even the best imagination is hard-pressed to grasp such incredible proportions. But what would it be like to actually stand next to a dinosaur? Not some cumbersome, repetitive display, but a creature that looks, moves, and acts just like the real thing.
About 10 years ago now that we started making a series called Walking with Dinosaurs. The idea was to take Jurassic Park style graphics and put them into a television show, but not just a kind of extraordinary drama like Jurassic Park, but a natural history program. But the proposal here in this arena spectacle was that the animals would get up and walk. There would be robots, for want of a better word. There would be physical models, and yet they would move around and the audience would believe that they're fighting and doing all the other stuff in front of them. Because at its core, the arena spectacle has to do what the series did, and that is to make people imagine they're looking at real animals.
It all started back in 2005 when I was first approached by Bill May. Bill had a concept, in fact a vision, to take dinosaurs based on the BBC television program into arenas. Billy took me out the back to this room and said, "This is a dinosaur." In fact, what it was, a cherry picker with some cloth draped over in the shape of a dinosaur. He convinced me, let's bring the dinosaurs back to life.
I didn't hear about it probably for a few months when they approached us and said, this is what some people down under want to do. And I thought they were mad, because it's very, very difficult.
The Walking with Dinosaurs television series was a world first at the time, largely made possible by computer graphics. However, some animatronics were used in the close-ups. Because of the challenges involved in creating a full animal, these remote-controlled puppets usually only depict part of the creature, with a performer or mechanism hidden off-screen. Our team would attempt to develop full-size dinosaurs. Constructing even one such creature would be another world first. Our team would attempt to build 15.
Walking with Dinosaurs started with me with a couple of phone calls from some old producers I'd worked with. They got me down for a few meetings in Melbourne, and I must admit, like a lot of these sort of jobs, when you first hear about something so ambitious, you kind of assume it's just going to disappear. And it really wasn't until we were in our first workshop back in the Docklands in Melbourne, we actually got the keys, we signed the lease and had this big empty space, and the reality of the project only sank in then. How do we make life-size walking dinosaurs?
A workshop the size of an aircraft hangar was found at Melbourne Central City Studios. This would be the location where 65 million years after their extinction, the dinosaurs would once again walk the Earth.
The casting of the dinosaurs. Each one of them took a lot of thinking of, do I have a fair, balanced representative of the 250 million years?
Bill picked them because he wanted things that reflected the enormous diversity of dinosaurs. So he picked extremes like the Brachiosaur, which is one of the tallest dinosaurs ever to existed. We've got the Pterosaur, which has the largest head of any known creature. Bill asked us to make them as big as they were ever found. In other words, when it says T-Rexes were 10 to 14 metres, we're making them 14 metres long.
It's an enormous undertaking that will require more than 50 of Australia's finest special effects artists. Divided into 4 broad departments, each will face their own challenges in bringing the dinosaurs back to life.
These creatures are so incredibly large, particularly the Brachiosaur, for instance, which is 11 metres high. How were we going to make something so big still be light enough to be manoeuvrable and flexible and dynamic?
The heavier they are means the stronger the structure has to be, the more energy we're going to consume to drive it around.
We don't want them all to be sluggish. We'd like them to have fairly snappy reactions. It doesn't take long for these things to get incredibly heavy. If you add, a couple of 100 kilos of steel and foam and skin over the top, you then got to have a very powerful device to drive it, and there's only a limited amount of battery space on them.
The weight of the skin compounds down through the mechanism to determine the final weight of the creature. If the skin is too heavy, the dinosaur won't move.
And that was one of the first challenges that we had to throw to the skin department.
So we looked at materials like textured fabrics like laces and different sorts of mediums like puff paint.
But the easiest way to get the most texture was to add the most amount of paint. And we weighed a few skins and Trev went, oh! So we went back to the drawing board.
And the skin being such a large surface area dictated that it was a big component of our weight, of our total weight. So we had to set about a process of making a really lightweight skin. The other important thing the skin had to achieve was to be incredibly flexible, so it could work in concert with our muscle bags to create that sense of stretch and pull of muscle and skin working together.
I have an idea on how to make a character move smoother than you normally see at amusement parks and so on. That involved coming up with another way of driving hydraulics, so that part is a challenging bit for me to come up with a new control system.
While Trev experiments with hydraulics, Sonny is tackling the third major obstacle.
Developing a convincing walk system was obviously fairly important when your show is called Walking with Dinosaurs. So we spent a lot of time coming up with some systems that might give us the type of walk we wanted. It borrows heavily from traditional puppetry in that rather than trying to manipulate all the muscles that would drive a leg, for instance, we just grabbed the foot.
The concept was to have a low-profile chassis that sits underneath the dinosaur. As well as providing locomotion and housing the driver, it would allow the dinosaur's feet to be operated by means of carriages on the side of the chassis. In theory, it works, but it will take 6 months before a prototype is ready for testing. The question is how to test a prototype without building one first.
When I met with Sonny, he built up this with the rough bone structure of the dinosaur, just so that we could work out where the pivots were, where the bones were, and how the dinosaur would move. And then I was able to essentially build up exactly the same thing in the 3D world and then just skinned it up so that we could at least get an idea that we're heading in the right direction.
While work proceeds on the movement and skin systems, the team continues with the task of prototyping.
You need to get a sense of the physical behaviour of something. And so a lot of our early tries at things are very basic. For the Utahraptor, it started off as Jen walking around the workshop with poster tubes strapped to her legs. For the Ornithocheirus, we had a very traditional marionette puppet made.
As well as resolving how the dinosaurs will move, the team must visualise how they will look. This is achieved by sculpting small models or maquettes.
By working out all the details we need to on this, it just saves us time when we're doing the larger model. I make a fairly simple wire framework. It's just a matter of then laying up the plasticine piece by piece. I usually try to work the anatomy of the dinosaur first and find the bone structure and the muscles and build all that up so it has some sort of anatomical correctness about it. And yeah, finally just adding the skin, finding the wrinkles and the detail. That's pretty much the process.
When I was first asked to do Walking with Dinosaurs, it was a bit of a problem because I thought, how do you turn this iconic television series that's known all around the world into a piece of theatre, a piece of arena theatre? And I actually came to this building, the Natural History Museum in London, to try and get I don't know, some kind of inspiration, some kind of feel for how it could be done. I was wandering around and I finished up here by the statue of Thomas Huxley. Thomas Huxley was, in a way, the father of paleontology, the first person really seriously to study dinosaur bones. Our narrator in our story, because that's the way we decided to go eventually, our narrator became to be called Huxley. In a way, it's quite appropriate that Huxley is imparting information in the 21st century as he was 150 years ago.
Imagine a lifetime. Imagine two. Now imagine 170 million years. For all that time, these noble, destructive, titanic creatures held sway upon the earth. For all that time.
One thing we had to confront, of course, was that actually 170 million years ago, there were no human beings alive on the planet. So we're suddenly popping our character Huxley into the middle of the Jurassic period or the Cretaceous period, and there wouldn't be a human being there. So do we have him interact with the dinosaurs? Do we have it as if he's somehow there as a fantasy character or something like that? We actually hit on a sort of balance between the two, and there is a moment when the dinosaur spots Huxley and he runs for his life. What mattered to me most was making a character out of this man, making him believable, making him somebody we'd want to go on the journey with.
Bones. Dinosaur bones. Turned into stone by the passage of unimaginable time. These fossils are almost all that is left behind of the most magnificent creatures ever to roam this planet. Not much, you may think, but there you're mistaken. And who am I to be telling you all of this? I am a paleontologist. I've spent my life scratching in the ground for what these creatures have left behind. There is just enough evidence for us to imagine what life was like then.
Everyone knows about the big carnivores, the meat-eating dinosaurs, the dinosaurs that ate other dinosaurs, but so many of the dinosaurs just ate plants. And what staggered me in the research is that the choice of food that they had when it comes to plants was so much more limited than what we have today. It would be silly to try and do planet Earth 160 million years of absolute accurate documentary history on stage. So we made some very early decisions to stylize, to use the benefits of theatre, to use the presence of the dinosaurs, to allow us to slip through time, to slip through location as seamlessly as possible, and yet give the big moments in the Earth's history big moments on stage. So the critical things that we could use were moving scenery. So we have a whole series of automated pieces that help us tell the story of Pangaea. We use projections, which starts to give us the life of the land, to give us a sense of vegetation type, to give us a sense of light and shade, night and day. And then we have inflatable vegetation. And this is something which has been so fantastic for the show. It gives the dinosaurs something to eat. It lets us watch, almost like time-lapse photography, watch plants come out and grow before our eyes in just a matter of seconds. They're heightened in their shape and colour, but they all refer back to the original plants that my research taught me about. And it took me to plants like this, the Araucaria, one of the great primitive plants, the stuff of dinosaur food that we still have in our gardens today.
Trev has made a breakthrough in finding a solution to the quality of movement.
It's closer to the way in which any animal works. It's got muscles in that. Muscles are flexible. They deflect when you push on them.
It may not look like much, but this one-axis test rig is proof of Trev's idea. But will it work for a whole dinosaur? Meanwhile, Richard's T-Rex is about to go into the moulding process.
That just comes down.
Every sculpt is different in terms of how you have to mould it. These were a bit scary to make because they're particularly detailed and fine sculpts. I'm going to cut the jaw off. It's much easier to mould that separately and then join it on as a cast later. No fear.
great.
Most of the casts are rigid, to be used in paint testing or pattern making.
We also cast the marquettes in a soft material as well. This enables me to play with the limbs and move them around and get some sense of how the creature would actually behave.
Let's play paleontologist. All right, so then you're saying he's going to be more of his legs moving rather than his hips swaying.
Yeah.
Because he's a narrower hip.
By manipulating the marquettes, Sonny and Trev are able to derive where the pivot points need to be and design the metal skeleton or frame that will support the creature. The first issue is to determine the range of movement these joints should have. And the second issue is as old as the dinosaurs themselves. Dr. John Long, Head of Sciences at Museum Victoria, explains.
When we look at these giant sauropod skeletons, people often wonder, how did they hold up their massive necks and their big tails? Careful study of their bones has revealed they had an intricate system that held up the neck and the tail by ligaments, so it didn't expend any energy on behalf of the animal.
The mechanical department face the same issues. If they use the hydraulics to maintain posture, there won't be enough power to make the creature move. They need the engineering equivalent of a dinosaur's ligaments.
So we've come up with a structure in the centre of each animal which has this vertical movement, and it can twist and tilt, and that's just the three central axes on the body. Then we move out into the neck and the tail and all the left and right actions there.
In the meantime, the mechanical department are trialling their version of dinosaur ligaments.
All the major axes on the dinosaurs have a bungee spring system to spring all our axes to neutral.
And this way the character, when we turn the hydraulics off, relaxes to a neutral position. And if we didn't use the shot cord to hold it all in central position, it would all just fall down and the head of the character would just fall on the ground.
On the other hand, the Utahraptors are a very different design, which presents very different challenges.
As with the larger ones, weight is a huge issue. Getting it balanced is a really important issue, and making it performable without destroying our poor performer underneath.
Okay, it's a prototype, that's why it's wrong.
It starts out in much the same way as the larger dinosaurs, with the construction of a frame. It's a simpler design, but the execution takes just as long as the larger dinosaurs. The question is, how to turn a 1/20th scale marquette into a full-size dinosaur. A week later, and the fabrication department is littered with odd-shaped bits of brown paper. These full-scale patterns are derived from the marquettes in one of two ways. Either the marquette is scanned into the computer and virtually sliced up, or a physical marquette is sliced up in the workshop. In either case, the result is the same. Accurate 1/20th scale patterns.
And from that we can blow those cross-sections up and sculpt by numbers, basically. We can create a whole dinosaur just by laying up these sections in the correct order.
Finished.
Eyes are one of the more engaging aspects of animatronics. Our process is to start off with the sphere of the right size. This is the eye mould pattern, which happens to be one of those silly $2 shop fortune-telling type devices. What's the question?
Does T-Rex want to be really shiny?
Or does he want to be leathery?
This is a yes or no.
Consult me later.
Oh no, now!
We start off with the external shape of the eye, which is a perfect sphere. And then we take that perfect sphere and machine off on the lathe a lens thickness. So we might be taking maybe a centimetre off the top of it. So onto the surface of the eye mould, we have to paint the iris and the cornea of the eye. So when we put the eyeball back into the mould, the gap is filled with a resin that sets clear, so it becomes very similar to the clear lens material that's over a real eye.
This is just a pretty simple eye mechanism with a blink and with a left and right on the eyeball.
Because the eyes have mechanisms that need a flexible medium for the eyelids, so we're using latex rubber, which is a clay positive original of the eye sculpt. A plaster mould is taken from that. A latex skin is taken out of that plaster mould, and that latex skin is then applied to the mechanism. It'll work.
Yes, yeah.
The rigid foam structures are coming together. But real creatures have fat and muscle. How do you replicate that in a robot?
It's based on sort of fat suit technology that in a lot of film fat suits are made with either foam beads or plastic beads. They have a sort of series of overlapping sacs which will jiggle and move to look like real flesh.
Meanwhile, the Utahraptor is ready for its first walking test.
On the whole, it was a really successful test. Well, it still keeps me up at 3 in the morning.
The fun things about going into large arenas such as this one is the terrifying volume and sheer lack of anything theatrical about the space. They are, after all, sports stadiums. You have to light the whole volume. You're not just lighting small people on the ground walking around in the traditional sense. These creatures would go all the way up to the roof, in effect. And to light that is both a technical and a creative challenge for a lighting designer. The amount of space that these creatures required to move around in freely and to roam, as it were, meant that the set designer and I were going to have to collaborate enormously because he had to leave a lot of empty space for them to move about in. Being an open space, we don't have the benefit of some of the more theatrical tricks you might bring into play when you're behind a proscenium arch and so on. The script called for a conflagration. Flames had to strike, lightning had to strike, and creatures had to perish. Then a very large lightning explosion strikes the Earth, sets fire to the planet. You animate some 300 moving lights above the arena, cause fire and mayhem, and we move the show on. The lighting for the Torosaur's fight is at the end of a number of attempts to give it again a heightened theatricality. And it really does play subtly and then not so subtly at the final gouge, but it plays on the tension of the moment. The lighting for the Brachiosaurus is romantic and conforms to a rather theatrical truism that at the end of Act 1 you want to send them out feeling wonderful into the interval and wanting to come back. It's just a wonderfully romantic evocation of a time when big, wonderful creatures roam the earth.
My background and what I do for a living is film and television. So I normally get finished film, and I have to sit there and fill it all up and have to make it all in sync. And so how's it going to work on this? Because these guys are presumably not going to be programmed to move. Everyone said, no, this is going to be a live show. Sonny, who built the dinosaurs, he said to us, it takes, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, for one of these creatures to move 1 metre, it will take this amount of seconds. So we literally sat there in this big room, and we went, you be the T-Rex, I'll be the Brachiosaurus, and we moved around, and I just had a stopwatch, and I went, okay, fine, that takes roughly 30 seconds. That takes a minute and a half, and that's how we put the whole thing together. In the show, this actual dinosaur is described as, an enigma. We're not quite sure what this was all about, and I have to say, musically, it was the same thing. I thought, what do you do for a Stegosaurus? It's not big or small, or it's all sort of seemed a bit in between. So I tried to think of something a little bit regal, a bit stately, like a king might, as he walks into his throne room. The next challenge for me as composer is to create this soaring piece of music. The bird comes through a storm. It's all, to me, all sounded quite gothic in terms of the concept. The music has lots of undulating movement in the strings to try and propel it along. So I had to come up with something that kind of soared and had movement and kind of helped the illusion. At the end of the show, the dinosaurs were wiped out, and the theory that we present in the show is that this big, great comet came down to Earth, and it was basically Armageddon, the end of the world. So that's great stuff for a composer. You think, oh, great, the end of the world, that I can do. And so I had to come up with this piece called A Comet, and I'll give you a go on the piano.
Leading into opening night, I don't think I've ever been so anxious. We were delivering dinosaurs barely weeks out from opening night. There were a couple that we were very nervous about getting up and running for opening night. And it was all untried technology. This is stuff that hadn't been done before, and we had no time to prototype, no time to play around. It had to work.
I've just hooked up the brakes, just hooked up the steering cable, just hooked up all the wiring, all the guys are just doing it now. And there goes again. It's knock-off time and we haven't finished.
Trev and the team worked late to stay on schedule. And the following morning, there's a new sound coming from the workshop. It's a resounding success and a big relief for the team who are banking on this test to work. Except for its eyes and horns, the Torosaur is now finished in fabrication. But there's no time to relax as the team starts building the other 13 dinosaurs for the arena show. To keep on track with the tight schedule, the Torosaur's head is removed for skinning, while the mechanical department works on getting the body to walk. With the Torosaur still being wired up, the skins department forges ahead with the Utahraptor. Jen makes up time by painting the Torosaur head. With no eyes, horns or body, Jen's painting must allow for these elements to be blended in as they become available. A week later, the Torosaur's walking action is ready to test.
Pretty good, Trev.
Six months of flat-out work. Look at that.
Up until now, we've just been saying, well, this should work, that should work. And now it's like, it does work.
With the skin now finished, the team do a final walking test.
Today it's a chance to test the leg walking system with the skin on for the first time.
The walk looks good. The team forges ahead and prepares the newly skinned Utahraptor for a walking test.
Once we've put all of the fabric on, it weighs down the mechanism a fair bit, and it's very hard to guess how much the mechanism will bulge under the pressure until you actually apply the pressure.
The team gathers to watch, but things don't quite go according to plan. Something snaps and the creature slumps forward.
There's a term we use called catastrophic failure.
It broke.
It was going to be so exciting, wasn't it?
And then it was such a such a failure.
After testing the ice arounds, the Raptor is ready for painting. With the Dinosaur now painted, the mechanical department once again have access. 6 months after putting their faith in the computer-generated model, the team will finally see if their solution works in the real world.
Fingers crossed.
All right, let's see how we go this time.
Eventually, the Dinosaur will have 24 axes of movement. What you see here is just 8 of them.
We've got the valves in, we've just put the solenoids on. It's very exciting stuff.
With the valves now installed, Trev and Dave prepare to fire up the body axes of the Dinosaur for the first time. The problem is how to control all 12 axes of the body when a puppeteer only has 2 hands. The answer lies in incorporating them into what's called a voodoo rig. It's essentially a sophisticated remote control which has the same axes of movement as the Dinosaur.
All right, we right now? I think Pete's right.
It's a big moment for Trev and the team. Everything seems to be going well until there's a sickening sound from the head of the Dinosaur.
Should be straight. So yeah, it's this structure up in here is the one that failed on Toro 1. And this whole thing is supporting load of the bungees, which counterbalance the whole weight of the neck and the head.
It's a setback that's easily repaired. In fact, it's a blessing in disguise, because each breakage tells the team something about the weak points in the design and helps them build creatures that can perform consistently show after show. However, any further testing will have to wait until the repairs are completed.
We're up to one of the final things, and that is mounting the subwoofer speaker, and the sound comes from the Dinosaur as well as from the theatre speakers. We're just trying to work out how to fit a speaker that's actually bigger than the hole it's got to go in.
A week later, the movements of the body are being incorporated into the walk cycle.
So as that comes forward on the rear left, the body needs to twist to the right.
The process is intricate, requiring the reduction of the way a real creature walks to a set of algorithms that can be programmed into a microchip which then controls the puppet. It takes a surprising amount of computer power to replicate the movements of a creature with a brain the size of a walnut. And not before time, as the puppeteers arrive to begin rehearsals.
Plan of attack is to start Richard off without the suit. We'll preset our critter back in the corner.
It takes 3 puppeteers to control a mechanical dinosaur, a driver who controls where the dinosaur goes, a voodoo operator who controls the body movements, and an auxiliary puppeteer.
Okay, basically with the left hand I operate the joystick, and that operates eyes left and right, so it operates the blink of the eyes, and also operates the jaw open and close. And then with my right hand, I'm operating the keyboard, which is going to supply all the different sounds that this beautiful dinosaur is going to make.
Fresh off the plane, director Scott Farris arrives with artistic director William May to see the dinosaurs for the first time.
Oh my God.
Scott's task is to direct the theatrical aspects of the production.
Look how fast it goes! To walk in and see a dinosaur that looks like it's alive is mind-blowing.
After several days of rehearsal, the puppeteers are gaining confidence and it's time to pack the dinosaurs up for the trip to Sydney.
This is a case of how many people can fit around one dinosaur. We're doing last-minute checks.
I didn't get much sleep last night. I was worried about loose bolts.
After 8 months, the team are finally ready to show their babies to the world.
treated the rehearsal process, from my point of view, like I would any show. So I treated the dinosaurs as actors, single actors, not teams of actors. That's when the dinosaurs come to life, and that's when you really believe that they're alive.
As rehearsals get underway, the Allosaurus stands in for the T-Rex. Blocking is challenging as the crew are still missing 2 dinosaurs. Meanwhile, actors Felix Nobis and myself have been cast in the part of Huxley, a paleontologist who brings the story of the dinosaurs to life.
Start moving when you say Pangea begins to break apart. Now there's going to be a passageway through here. Yeah.
Back in the workshop, the build team works frantically to complete the last 2 dinosaurs. The T-Rex and the big Brachiosaurus are the stars of the show. They were deliberately scheduled last so that they would benefit from the team's experience. But the last 2 dinosaurs are also the biggest and therefore the hardest to make. The team is starting to worry that building them last might not have been such a good idea. The rehearsals finish 5 days before Christmas and the crew pack the dinosaurs for Sydney. But there's still no sign of the big Brachiosaur or the T-Rex. In the workshop, the atmosphere is far from festive. The creatures are moving, but it only highlights structural issues that will take time and personnel to correct. But Trev has neither, as many of the crew are required in Sydney for the setup. The team continues preparing the dinosaurs as the focus of rehearsals shifts to the technical aspects of the show.
And then you're moving back. We finished up in Melbourne with what we thought was the shape of the show. We came here, and then you add in all the technical elements. You start layering in lighting and music and scenic elements, and it becomes very complicated then. And the challenge has been continually pulling all these very different departments and elements together, and that's a challenge.
2 days before Christmas, some gifts arrive for the team, and this year, the best presents come in big boxes. The T-Rex and the big Brachiosaur have arrived. Both dinosaurs carry enough power to run the average house for a week. But because of its size, it's the Brachiosaur that represents the pinnacle of engineering achievement. In life, it weighed as much as 20 elephants. It's a testament to the skill of the team that they can reduce the heaviest creature ever to walk the earth to the weight of a delivery van. The entire cast is finally assembled, and it's straight into rehearsals. "12 months after starting the build, opening night is finally here. In just hours, these halls will be crowded with more than 7,000 people, all anxious to get a look at the fruits of the team's labour.
No, I'm feeling really excited, actually. We've made it. I think we're ready. We're as ready as we're going to be.
But backstage, there are other dramas unfolding. With less than an hour before the show, Trev has the big Brachiosaur opened up right back to the frame.
We've been a little bit late doing a final check on this neck, and we've realised some of the turnbuckles haven't been upgraded to the proper spec. There's a chance that the neck would actually drop straight to the floor.
No pressure at all.
Trev has finished installing the safety cable, and now it should be just a simple matter of getting skins to close the Velcro and poppers.
No, it's a bit more than a popper job. It's undone right back to the inflatable, so there's quite a bit of Velcroing and bunging, I think, as well.
That's not a 7, is it?
No, this is an 8.
Is that strap an 8?
The strap's an 8.
Let me just check the number on the other neck. There's 7 coming out of here. See if we can get a look at that.
Good, so that's in the right spot.
A little bit bulgy.
I think you should punch it.
And just in the nick of time.
All stage staff, please stand by. Staging staff, please stand by. Thank you.
We should hop in. It's a 5-minute call.
Stand by for the pre-show announce. Stand by music Q1. Stand by house lights to half, and then house lights out. Stand by electrics Q2, and stand by complete. Sugars, everyone, here we go. House lights out, go. Music Q1, go.
The evening flashes past as each member of the team dedicates themselves to the task at hand. The team, now consisting of more than 65 people, pull together a seamless show.
By interval, I knew we had a special show, one that would travel the world. They said it couldn't be done, and we did it.
It's a little alarming sometimes to think that actually Walking with Dinosaurs, the TV show, went out over 10 years ago now. And you realise with this show now travelling around the world, there's a whole load of children who will never have seen my show, my original TV show. And instead, for them, Walking with Dinosaurs is this live show. And the good thing is it's reawakening it for that audience. To them, it's something new and fresh and exciting, which is what the TV show did a long time ago. And it just seems to go from strength to strength. Millions of people have now seen it. And for them, the experience is much bigger than just seeing a show on TV. It's sitting there for an hour and a half or 2 hours, enjoying something that will be imprinted on their minds. They'll never forget it, and that's wonderful. This show will be Walking with Dinosaurs for the future.
We knew that we'd arrived on the international scene when we played to a roaring crowd at Madison Square Garden.
Obviously it's a unique experience for people to see a dinosaur walking around. That's what the show's success is, I suppose. No matter where we go, you'll always see an audience react the same way, whether it be Adelaide in Australia or whether it be Saskatoon in Canada or here in Madison Square Garden.
For any production, I think, to be at Madison Square Gardens is an absolute coup. And I never really thought we'd ever make it this far.
I think I'll wake up tomorrow and say, hey, did that really happen? But it has. And I'm not the only one that's enjoyed the journey here tonight. It's all the kids, the parents, and especially the team.
And it's been like quite a long journey to get here. But we finally got to Madison Square Gardens. The last time I was at Madison Square Gardens was to watch Metallica. So we're hoping our show's going to get somewhere to reaching those same heights as those guys. So yeah, we're really excited about it. Yeah.
To go down to Australia, as we did at the beginning, and actually see the dinosaurs in action, because I wrote the script to videos and mobile phone calls. So actually to see them, it just blew me away. I mean, they're just so incredible.
I was terrified, actually, because I had a whole huge group of theatre friends, and I didn't have any idea what they'd make of it. But everything went well, and they all seemed to have had a good time, so I'm happy.
Where do we go next? Well, hopefully Europe, Asia, and take on the world. I'm a very proud man.
The extinction of the dinosaurs paved the way for we humans to evolve. But it's the human fascination with these creatures that makes them the subject of countless stories, all of them asking the same question: what would it be like to go walking with dinosaurs? Our team built these creatures to answer that question. So as the story of the people that made them draws to a close, the journey of these dinosaurs has only just begun.